Question number one for going to the answers. So let's think about this for a second. It says in the above diagram, B lies on segment AC. X and Y have to be integers. Integers, hopefully we've learned by now, is nice rounded numbers, not decimals or fractions. So what's going to happen here is when I look at my answers, because I have to look at the answers to answer this question, I look and I see 1, 2, 3, 4 odd numbers and 1 even. Kind of interesting that that happens. Here's why. If x is odd, that means the entirety of y plus y must also be odd. And if they are split evenly, because they're both y, so it's split in half, if I take an odd number and divide it by 2, I'm going to get a decimal or a fraction, depending upon which way you want to look at it. So an example would be 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. If x is even, then that means that the two y's have an even number to split. So say it was 4, for argument's sake, that would mean 2. So I still get a nice integer answer. So that means my answer for number 1 must be 40. Question number 2, I'm going to try each pattern. I have to go to the answers to figure out what the answer is. I've got add 10 to each number. 14 to 24 works, and then the second 24 to 44 does not work. That's adding 20. You'll notice for each of these, by the time you go from 24 to 44, I break the pattern. So same with take half and add 17. I'm looking for 29 for that 44. Triple the number and subtract 18. That doesn't work out from 24 to 44. So what does work is the subtract 2 and double a number. I try that each time. It works. 24 to 44 actually works for the first time. Works the rest of the way. I want to check all of those out if I have the time. Also, I'd like to note that it says for the fifth option, none of these rules create the pattern. What are the odds of that happening? Not very good. If you see an answer that says none of the above, no solution, very rarely is that the correct answer. It can be, but it's the last thing to consider. Question number 3 is a little tricky for us. We have to read very carefully. It says that if the difference of two numbers is greater than the sum of two numbers, which of the following must be true? So we have a bunch of scenarios to try. We just talked about how if it says none of these, we don't want to answer that. More than likely, the odds are very low. So we're going to move on and we're going to try, say, the first scenario. So neither number is a negative. I plug in two numbers. I chose 3 and 2. Doesn't really matter what you pick. So 3 minus 2 is not greater than 3 plus 2, so that one is false. So the first is out. Now, I kind of had a feeling looking at the other answers that that could be true. Here's why. The other three say at least one is negative, exactly one is negative, or both is negative. So I'm going to start with either one or both. I chose to start with both. So if I start with both being negative, you can see the one I tried here where I plugged in -3 and -2, and it turned out to be a true statement. So because of that, I know that the answer of exactly 1 is wrong. Then I move on to at least 1, meaning that one of them could be, or both could be. So I try 1, in this case again, I tried 3 and a -2, and it came out to be true again. 5 is greater than 1, so it turns out that the answer is at least one of the numbers is negative. So try some different scenarios. Even if it fails once, we can remove that option. If it works, that doesn't mean it will always work, but the odds are pretty good in a question like this, especially with the way they asked about at least one negative, exactly one negative, or both negative, we would get that answer. A more math way to go about it would be to set up a problem. So in this case, it is the difference of two numbers, so x minus y greater than x plus y. If I go ahead and solve this, I notice the x's drop out. And if the x's drop out in a problem, that means it doesn't matter what x is. It's an identity. X is always going to be equal to the x on the other side, so it doesn't matter what x is. Since it doesn't matter what x is, it could be positive or negative. So I keep going with my answer here. I add the y to the other side. Divide both sides by 2, and I get 0 is greater than y, which really means y is a negative. Kind of backwards, so it's hard to think about, but 0 is greater than y means that y must be negative. So if y has to be negative, and x could go either way, that means that my answer of at least one variable is negative is accurate. So next question that I need to look at the answers in order to figure out. 50 root 50 minus root 100 is equivalent to which of the following? I already went ahead and broke it down. If you're good at roots, I broke it down to 5 times 5 times 2, which is a 5 root 2. And then minus 10, because I know the square root of 100 is 10, so my answer is G. Now let's say you didn't know how to do that, however. You could absolutely go through, plug the original into your calculator, get the decimal, and then go through and check each one until you get one that matched that. So clearly H wouldn't work when I plug in root 50 minus root 100 in my calculator, but I could check the others and see which one works. And it turns out to be 5 root 2 minus 10. All right, and our last question, question number 5. We're talking about triangles. Whenever there is a make up your own triangle question, whether it's a go to the answers type question or not, be careful when you make up that triangle because it's very tempting to call it like a right triangle when in the directions it never mentions that. So that's why answer A is wrong. Yes, it does work for right triangles, but only for right triangles. I can come up with another triangle. I call it 2, 3, 4 triangle. That works as a triangle, but it doesn't fit that answer A pattern with our Pythagorean theorem. B, not too bad looking. I have 2 plus 3 is greater than 4. 5 is greater than 4, so I'm kind of liking B right now. I'm going to keep checking it out, though. What if I'm making a mistake? So let's disprove the others. C would be 5 is less than 4. That's not correct for my triangle, so I don't like C. D is totally ridiculous. It does say that A is smaller than C, so they can't equal each other. That's no good. And the answer for E would actually be what would be considered like a flat triangle or almost a non-existent triangle. It can't happen that 2 of the sides added together equal the third. I get like this smushed shape. So I do like my answer of B that I thought all along.